Okay, so I will explain about test. According to Brown and Abewikrama and Cameron, testing is one type of assessment that formally measures learners' English language performance. It's usually given at set times during the term, at the end of a unit, or the middle or the end of a term. It involves a set of clearly developed procedures for giving and scoring the learner's performance. A test can measure specific knowledge, for example, accuracy with specific vocabulary words, grammatical structures, or writing mechanics, or overall proficiency in using the language. It can be developed by a teacher or be high-stakes, standardized test given by an educational institution or ministry. Okay, next is about types of tests. So there are three types of tests. First is norm reference and criterion reference test. In norm reference test, each test taker's score is interpreted in relation to a mean, or average score, median, middle score, standard deviation, or extent of variance in scores, and or percentile rank. The purpose in such tests is to place test takers along a mathematical continuum in rank order. Scores are usually reported back to the test taker in the form of a numerical score. Next is criterion reference tests. On the other hand, are designed to give test takers feedback, usually in the form of grades on specific course or lesson objectives. Classroom tests involving the students in only one class and connected to a curriculum are typical of criterion reference testing. Next is the second types is discrete point and integrative testing. So discrete point tests are constructed on the assumption that language can be broken down into its component parts and that those parts can be tested successfully. These components and the skills of listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and various units of language. Discrete points of phonology or graphology, morphology, lexicon, syntax, and discourse. It was claimed that in the overall language proficiency test, then should sample all four skills and as many linguistic discrete points as possible. The last is communicative language testing. By the middle of 1980s, so the last one is communicative language testing. By the middle of 1980s, the language testing field has abandoned arguments about the unitary trait hypothesis and had begun to focus on designing communicative language testing tasks. According to Bachman and Palmer, include among fundamental principles of language testing the need for a correspondence between language testing performance and language use in order for a particular language test to be useful for its intended purposes. Test performance must correspond in demonstrable ways to language used in non-test situations. Okay, next is testing skills for young learners. First skill is listening. People teacher talk carefully. Children will spend most of their time listening to the teacher giving instructions, modeling language, singing songs, doing chants, dramatizing dialogues, and telling stories. Use listening activities that reflect real-life listening. Activities should involve authentic language and real-world context as much as possible to make the learning more meaningful, motivating, and useful for students. Next skills is reading. After finishing reading, we can set of questions that can be asked. At this point, it's possible to go back, page by page, through the story or text, pointing to the pictures or illustration, and asking the children to talk about what happened, and providing help with vocabulary as needed. Next skills is writing. We can do shared writing. It will provide learners with a model of how to go about writing. Unlike language experience, where the teacher writes on the board or chart paper, asking for input from the students and explaining her decisions. The last skills is speaking. We can practice language can gradually become less controlled and more guided, which allows students to have more choice in the language used. The goal is to reach a level of independence or creativity with the language. Next, the different types of tests. The first test is placement test. So, placement test is a test usually given to a student entering an educational institution to determine specific knowledge or proficiency in various subjects for the purpose of assignment to appropriate courses or classes. The second is diagnostic test. So diagnostic test is a test used to identify a condition or its cause. It's used to diagnose. A diagnostic test performed as a part of a medical exam may be used to identify the cause of symptoms or identify a disease. Next is proficiency test. Proficiency testing determines the performance of individual laboratories for specific tests or measurements and is used to monitor laboratories' continuing performance. Proficiency testing is also called interlaboratory comparison, as this term implies proficiency testing compares the measuring results obtained by the different laboratories. And the last one is achievement test. So, achievement test is an assessment of developed knowledge or skill. The most common type of achievement test is a standardized test, such as the SAT, required for college entry in the United States. Achievement tests are developed to measure skills and knowledge learned in a given grade level, usually through planned instruction, such as training or classroom instructions. Achievement tests are often contrasted with aptitude tests.
The explanation. I will explain about assessment. So before we know about the definition, complete definition, we need to know the assessment generally. Generally, assessment is appraising or estimating the level or magnitude of some attribute of a person. This is the definition for most of it. For the educational context, assessment is it is the definition of several experts. We combine, and this is the complete definition. Assessment is assessing or estimating the level or magnitude of the knowledge, skill, attitudes, and beliefs of a student to refine programs and improve student learning in an ongoing process, which includes various methodological techniques. Yes, like that. We continue to assessing young learners. Assessing young learners needs several considerations because assessing young learners is different from assessing for adults, like that. So, we need to consider their age, maturity, experience, cognitive, linguistic, and literacy development. There are several, we need to consider that those things for assessing young learners, their age, their maturity, their experiences, yes, like that. And then for developing and or identifying appropriate assessment for young learners that involves first, understanding the basic criteria that guide all assessments. So this is the basic criteria that all assessments have. For the first is reliability. For a language assessment to be reliable, the result should be accurate and consistent. Reliability has to do with the consistency of measures across different times, test forms, rather and other characteristics of the measurement context. A student should receive the same score on the assessment if it is given on the next day or if it is scored by two different writers. If students would demonstrate the same basic proficiency in listening or reading in class score average differently on an assessment, then the assessment's reliability is questionable. If two teachers score a student's writing or speaking with very different scores, then reliability is also a problem. It may be that the directions were unclear or the scoring criteria were confusing. And then we have validity. For a language assessment to be valid, the decisions made by the test must be meaningful, appropriate, and useful. It also has to assess what it purports to assess. And if a task is assessing children's ability to talk about what they did over the weekend or to read a short text about zoo or farm animals, that we need to be sure that the task it is at the appropriate level for the children, that that they are not being asked to use language or content that they haven't encountered. The task should also be appropriate for assessing the desired skill. Asking students to read a passage aloud doesn't assess reading, except for decoding and pronouncing individual words. A writing test that only considers vocabulary, spelling, and mechanics is not a valid assessment of the child's writing. The uses of an assessment also need to be valid. And assessments have social and educational consequences that must be fair, and what they are used for must match their intended purpose to be valid assessment. And then we have practicality. An assessment task is practical if needed resources are available for the assessment task. Even a brief one-to-one talk with students may not be practical if the class has 30 students and they only meet a few hours a week. But if class size is small and the time for instruction greater, it may be practical. One also has to consider the amount of time and training needed for scoring the assessment. And then we have authenticity. A language assessment is authentic if the language being assessed is used in ways that are appropriate and relevant to young learners. For example, creating a greeting card, playing a word game, or collaboratively writing a new verse to a song or chant or are basically authentic, as they are ways that children use language and ways in which they are instructed. To be authentic, an assessment should be child-friendly. In general, paper and pencil tasks do not meet the criteria of authenticity for young learners. And the last we have pushback. Which refers to the effect that tests have on teaching and learning. Its impact can be positive or negative. Ideally, a test should promote more effective instruction. What is tested should be what is agreed upon as the most important language knowledge and use. And teaching and learning needs should dictate the form and timing of assessment. However, in practice, the scenario is quite different. Assessment seems to drive teaching by forcing teachers to teach what is going to be assessed, and it can also influence the language curriculum and policy. Yes, like that. And we move into understanding the guidelines, still in developing or identifying appropriate assessment for young learners. And we have um, understanding the guidelines, the special guidelines for assessing your learners. So, in assessing your learners, we have special guidelines. For the first, we have mirror learning. Mirror learning is what is tough and what we taught, that what we assessed, like that, mirror learning. And we have contribute to learning. That they have both learners and teachers need to contribute. They have to contribute in learning to learning, and motivate learners and build learners' confidence that the task of the teacher, and then motivate and then include a variety of techniques for learners, different intelligences and learning styles, of course, because different different students have their own style and need several techniques to yes, to mengajarkannya, to teach them. And then we have allow all learners to experience success while providing advanced learner opportunities to demonstrate their proficiency. Yes, of course. They need let them to show their talent, let them to show that what they have, so they can feel they can experience success, like that, and that will increase their confidence, and then be contextualized and reflect relevant tasks and language for young learners, of course, and we have take place over time. We have types of assessment are divided based on their purpose, forms, like that, and we have, for the first, we have traditional and alternative. Traditionally, assessment took the form of tests or quizzes with multiple choice items, matching, filling in the blanks, and true to false questions, sometimes in standardized tests that measure whether students have met a specific goal or outcome, and other times set by the teacher. In addition to traditional form of this assessment, there are a number of alternatives or performance assessment that require students to apply the knowledge, skills, and strategies used in learning. And alternative assessment it is like any method of finding out what a student knows or can do that is in, intended to show growth and inform instruction and is not a standardized or traditional task. Alternative assessment, also known as assessment for learning, use activities that reveal what students can do with the language, emphasizing their strength rather than their weaknesses in using English for meaningful purposes. These performance assessments are classroom based, involving tasks in which language is used in authentic ways or through simulation or real life language use. Yes, like that. And then we have formal and informal. All comments and praise that teacher gives either intentionally or unintentionally can be categorized as an informal assessment. For example, when the teacher says, "Good job," I think you mean that you broke the glass, not to break the glass. That, like that. Like giving smile is an informal assessment too. And then for formal assessment is procedurally systematically, which contains skills and knowledge that will be assessed by the teacher. The formal assessment is carried out periodically, which is used to inform teachers and students to of the extent to which students understand the learning and has been taught and to measure their abilities. For the example, one of the forms of formal assessment is a test. And then we have formative and summative assessment. Formative assessment is that occurs during the teaching and learning process. And formative assessment can be in the form of supervising students and noting their strengths and weaknesses and difficulties in classroom learning, asking questions and noting their responses or making homework. For summative assessment can be a chapter or end of semester test developed by the teacher or complemented by a curriculum. These assessments are often used to report on students' progress in language learning and also to help evaluate the effectiveness of students' program, curriculum, materials, or placement procedures. And we have non-reference and criterion reference assessment. Non-reference assessment ranks each individual learner in comparison to all others who were assessed. Standardized, formal, high-stakes tests are usually non-reference, with each test taker's scores ranked in relation to the average score, the middle score, and the percentile of the score of all who took the test. And then we have criterion reference assessment. Refers to the criteria of comparing students' performance against a specific set of criteria, usually linked to a curriculum or course. Criteria may also be associated with a set of descriptors, such as benchmarks associated with a set of standards or a long scale. And we have assessing skills for young learners. As we know that skills in language, there are four: speaking, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. There are two main components of listening assessment in a young learner student's classroom. The first is an assessment of phonemic awareness, the ability to distinguish different sounds, and the second, the component of the listening assessment is listening comprehension. When assessing listening comprehension, make sure that your student understand the word, instructions, and individual pieces of text. We have speaking. Speaking skills can be assessed by asking young learners questions and engaging them in conversation. You can use these students by asking specific questions during class. Yes, like that. When assessing students' oral skills, you may want to use an analytic or holistic rubric. The holistic rubric provides one overall score. Analytic rubrics provide information broken down into categories. And we have reading, assessing reading. Assessing reading skills. Assessing students' literacy skills is a complex process. This is very difficult, especially when students are studying SL or EFL. In addition to assessing whether students can decode, sound, or pronounce words, you also need to assess their ability to understand written text. Comprehension questions can be used to determine whether children understand a particular passage. And then we have writing. Writing assessment is assessed by generating and examining writing samples. Students can write examples consisting of sentences, paragraphs, or essays. This sample can be either fiction or non-fiction and can be assessed by using an analytic or holistic rubric. Just like the speaking assessment, the analytic score is broken down into categories, and the holistic scores is the overall score. However, the category for the analytical writing assessment is slightly different from the category used by the analytical speaking rubrics. Alright, that's all. I think that's all for the explanation for the assessment. Let's move into the next explanation. Thank you very much.
Evaluation. According to patent 1987, evaluation is a process that critically examines a program. It involves collecting and analyzing information about a program's activities, characteristics, and outcomes. Evaluation focuses on grades and might reflect classroom components other than course content and mastery level. An evaluation can be used as a final review to judge the quality of its instruction. It's product-oriented. This means that the main question is, what's been learned? In short, evaluation is judgmental. Example, you are given a flower. The evaluation is, the flower is purple and is too short with not enough leaves. So, evaluation is judgmental. Evaluation can help you identify areas for improvement and ultimately help you realize your goals more efficiently. It is important to periodically assess and adapt your activities to ensure they are as effective as they can be. Evaluation also enables you to demonstrate your program's success or progress. The information you collect allows you to better communicate your program's impact to others, which is critical for public relations, staff morale, staff morale, and attracting and retaining support from current and potential funders. Types of evaluation. Evaluation fall into one of two broad categories, namely formative and summative. Formative evaluation are conducted during program development and implementation and are useful if you want direction on how to best achieve your goals or improve your program. While summative evaluation should be completed once your programs are well established and will tell you to what extent the program is achieved its goals. Formative is divided into two, namely need assessment and process or implementation evaluation. Need assessment determines who needs the program, how great the need is, and what can be done to best meet the need. This needs assessment can help determine what audiences are not currently served by programs and provide insight into what characteristic new program should have to meet these audiences' needs. For more information, need assessment training uses a practical training module to lead you through a series of interactive pages about need assessment. Process or implementation evaluation examines the process of implementing the program and determines whether the program is operating as planned. Can be done continuously or as a one-time assessment. Results are used to improve the program. A process evaluation of this program may focus on the number and type of participants reached and or determining how satisfied these individuals are with the program. Summative also divided into two, namely outcome evaluation and impact evaluation. Outcome evaluation investigates to what extent the program is achieving its outcomes. These outcomes are the short-term and medium-term changes in program participants that result directly from the program. For example, the examination result outcome evaluation may examine improvements in participants' knowledge, skills, attitudes, intention, or behaviors. Impact evaluation determines any broader, longer-term changes that have occurred as a result of the program. These impacts are the net effects, typically on the entire school, community, organization, society, or environment. This impact evaluation may focus on the educational, environment quality, or human health impacts of these programs. Evaluating skills. The first is evaluation for listening skills. The evaluating stage of listening occurs when a listener judges the content of the message or the character of the speaker. Evaluation becomes the fourth stage in the process of listening to or assessing the value of the message. We may think this makes sense, or conversely, this is very strange, because each person embodies bias and perspectives learned from a wide range of life experiences. The evaluation of the same message can vary widely from listener to listener. Even the most open-minded listener will have an opinion from the speaker. and that opinion will influence how the message is evaluated. People are more likely to evaluate message positively when the speaker speaks clearly, presents ideas in a logical manner, and provides reason to support the points made. The second is evaluation for speaking skill. A student might struggle with grammar and pronunciation, but how creative is he or she when communicating with the language he or she knows? Evaluating communication in your students means looking at their creative use of the language they do know to make their points understood. Evaluating speaking skills can be done in several ways, namely, what speakers do, phonological features of speech, following the rules of language, paralinguistic devices, communicative functions, and the last, social meaning. The third is evaluation for writing skill. If you are evaluating a piece of writing, then you are going to need to read the work thoroughly. While you read the work, keep in mind the criteria you are using to evaluate. The evaluative aspects might be grammar, sentence structure, spelling, content, usage of source, style, and or many other things. To make sure you are going in the right direction, you can make use of an editor or a typer. And the last is evaluation for reading skill. Evaluating is a reading strategy that is conducted during and after reading. This involves encouraging the reader to form opinions, make judgments, and develop ideas from reading. Teachers can create evaluative questions that will lead the student to make generalization about and critically evaluate a text.
Hi, I'm host Hatimah, and let's talk about games. Games can be the best way to make our students, especially for young learners, to become more active in the classroom. So, in our paper, we write 4 games that we can apply in the classroom, but in this video, I just want to talk about 2 games. The first game is Simon Say. It is an excellent game for young learners because this game can make them excited and wanting more and more. We can use this game to improve their listening comprehension and their vocabulary. How to play? First, as a teacher, you can stand in front of class and also make them stand out from the chair. Then do an action and say, Simon say, plus your action. Then your student must copy what you do. Example, if you say, Simon say, clap your hands. Then your students must clap their hands. Repeat this action in different things, like Simon say smile, then your students must smile. Then do an action without say Simon say. Example, you can say clap your hands without Simon say. Whoever do this action, like clap your hands, time is out, they must sit down. Repeat this action again. To make it harder, we can speed up the action. Then the winner is the last students standing. Then you can give them a reward. And the second game is the meme. Miming is an excellent and interactive way to practice vocabulary and speaking skills of students. This game works for any age group, especially for young learners. It's like a guess game because some students will do an action without say what they do, and other students will guess what their friends do. If they correct to guess the action, they will get 1 point. Then how to play? Before the class starts, you must write some action in the paper, like washing dishes, eat some apple, or drink some water, or reading book, and other action. Then split your class into 2 teams. Then bring 1 student of each team in front of class and make them to choose 1 action that from the paper you have write. Then they must meme that action, like maybe reading book. The students must act like they reading on a book. Then her teams must guess what she doing. You're reading a book. Then it's a correct answer. They will get 1 point. Repeat these activities until all students of each group meme at least 1 action. Interesting, right? That's all from me. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.